Imagine you're strolling through the glittering Paris Exposition of 1889. The Eiffel Tower looming like an iron giant, when a scream pierces the air, a priceless artifact vanishes, and only one man can unravel the web of secrets. Hercule Poirot, Chapter 1. The Arrival in Paris. Picture this. It's the spring of 1889, and Paris is buzzing like a beehive on steroids. The World's Fair, or, as the French call it, the Exposition Universelle, has turned the city into a wonderland of innovation and spectacle. Massive pavilions showcase everything from steam engines to exotic cultures, and right in the center stands the brand new Eiffel Tower, a towering marvel that's got everyone talking. Some love it, others call it an eyesore. But amid all this excitement, something sinister is brewing. Enter Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective with his perfectly waxed moustache and those little grey cells that never miss a beat. Poirot isn't here for the fun. He's been summoned by an old friend, Monsieur Dupont, a wealthy industrialist who's exhibiting his latest invention, a revolutionary clockwork automaton that can predict the weather with eerie accuracy. Dupont's telegram was urgent. Come at once, mon ami. Theft imminent. Trust no one. Poirot, ever the lover of puzzles, packs his bags and boards the Orient Express, arriving in Paris just as the Exposition opens its gates to throngs of visitors from around the globe. As Poirot steps off the train at Gare du Nord, the air is thick with the scent of fresh croissants and coal smoke. He hails a horse-drawn cab and heads straight to the Champ de Mars, the heart of the fair. The crowds are a mix of wide-eyed tourists, sharp-eyed inventors, and elegant socialites in their finest gowns. Poirot's keen eyes scan the scene, a group of American engineers debating machinery, a troupe of Algerian dancers performing under colorful tents, and vendors hawking souvenirs like miniature Eiffel Towers. But beneath the glamour, Poirot senses tension, whispers of rivalries between exhibitors, jealousies over prizes, and rumors of spies from competing nations. Meeting Dupont at his pavilion, Poirot learns the details. The automaton isn't just a gadget, it's embedded with a secret code that could revolutionize navigation for ships, making it a target for thieves. Dupont shows Poirot the device, a brass contraption with gears whirring like a living thing, displayed under glass with guards posted around the clock. I've received threats, Dupont confides, his voice low. Anonymous notes saying the automaton will disappear before the fair's end. Poirot nods, twirling his moustache. Fear not, my friend. The little grey cells are already at work. To get a feel for the layout, Poirot takes a leisurely walk through the grounds. He marvels at the gallery of machines, where gigantic engines huff and puff, demonstrating the power of the industrial age. He pauses at the Edison exhibit, where the American inventor showcases his phonograph, playing tinny music that draws oohs and ahs. Practical tip for any aspiring detective: always observe the ordinary, it's often where clues hide. For instance, Poirot notices a man in a bowler hat lingering too long near Dupont's pavilion, his eyes darting suspiciously. Is he a rival inventor, a foreign agent? Poirot files it away as the sun sets, casting a golden glow over the Seine. Poirot retires to his hotel, the Grand Hotel near the Opera. Over a dinner of escargot and fine wine, he ponders the case. The Exposition is a perfect cover for crime, thousands of strangers, chaotic crowds, and valuables everywhere. But Poirot thrives on such challenges. The mystery begins, he murmurs to himself. This sets the stage for the intrigue to come, where alliances form and suspects emerge under the shadow of the tower. Stay tuned for the next twist. Chapter 2. Shadows in the crowd. The morning sun bathes the Paris Exposition in a warm, golden light. But, for Hercule Poirot, the glow only sharpens his focus on the shadows lurking beneath the surface. The Champ de Mars is alive with energy vendors. Shout about their wares, children clutch balloons, and the hum of machinery fills the air like a mechanical symphony. Poirot, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit with a carnation in his lapel, navigates the bustling fairgrounds with the precision of a chess master. His mission today is clear: identify potential suspects who might have their eyes on Monsieur Dupont's priceless automaton. A detective's first rule, he muses, is to understand the players in the game before the first move is made. Poirot begins at the heart of the Exposition, near the grand fountain of progress, where water jets dance. In sync with the brass band's lively tune, he sips a café au lait from a nearby stall, using the moment to observe the crowd. The Exposition is a melting pot. French aristocrats mingle with German scientists, Russian diplomats and British merchants, each with their own agendas. Poirot's little grey cells hum as he takes mental notes. A man in a Prussian military uniform glances nervously at a pocket watch. A woman in a sapphire gown scribbles furiously in a notebook, her eyes darting toward Dupont's pavilion. Suspicion, Poirot knows, is not evidence, but it's a spark to kindle investigation. His first stop is a meeting with Dupont's assistant, Mademoiselle Claire Lefebvre, a sharp-witted young woman who oversees the pavilion's operations. Claire Lefebvre greets Poirot with a polite but guarded smile, her auburn hair pinned neatly under a stylish hat. "Monsieur Poirot, I'm relieved you're here," she says, leading him to a quiet corner of the pavilion. She explains the automaton's security: 2 armed guards during the day, a locked steel case at night, and a key that never leaves Dupont's possession. Yet, Claire admits, strange things have happened: tools misplaced, papers shuffled, and once a guard swore he saw a figure slip out of the pavilion after hours. Poirot listens intently, his eyes narrowing. "Mademoiselle, tell me about the staff. Who has access?" Claire lists the team, herself, the guards, a mechanic named Pierre, and an English consultant, Mr. Reginald Blake, hired for his expertise in clockwork. Poirot decides to meet this Mr. Blake next. He finds the Englishman at the British Pavilion, where a steam-powered loom is drawing gasps from onlookers. Blake is a lanky man with a nervous laugh and ink-stained fingers, his tweed suit slightly rumpled. "Marvelous event, isn't it?" Blake says, gesturing to a model of a steamship. Poirot steers the conversation to the automaton, noting Blake's sudden stiffness. "A fine piece of work, Dupont's machine," Blake says, but his eyes avoid Poirot's practical tip: a good detective watches body language, shifting feet, or a too quick smile can betray unease. Poirot marks Blake as someone to watch, sensing the man knows more than he lets on. Next, Poirot investigates the mysterious figure he spotted yesterday, the man in the bowler hat. Tracking him through the crowd, Poirot corners him near the colonial exhibit, where a display of African artifacts draws a curious throng. The man introduces himself as Hans Vogel, a Dutch journalist covering the fair. His story checks out. He shows Poirot a notebook filled with sketches and notes about the exhibits, but his interest in Dupont's pavilion seems excessive for a mere reporter. "I'm fascinated by innovation," Vogel explains, but Poirot catches a flicker of something gilt. ambition in his eyes. Another name for the suspect list. As noon approaches, Poirot visits the gallery of machines again, this time to observe the exhibitors. He overhears a heated exchange between two French inventors, Monsieur Leclerc and Madame Dubourg, both rivals of Dupont. Leclerc, a burly man with a booming voice, complains about Dupont's unfair advantage in the competition for the Exposition's grand prize. Madame Dubois, elegant but sharp-tongued, hints at sabotage. If Dupont thinks his toy is safe, he's naive. Poirot files their names away, intrigued by their motives. Could jealousy drive someone to theft? By afternoon, Poirot returns to Dupont's pavilion to inspect the automaton itself. He examines the glass case, the locks, and the surrounding area, noticing a faint scratch on the floor near the display, possibly from a tool or a forced entry. Practical tip for sleuths: look for what's out of place, no matter how small. A single mark can tell a story. Poirot questions the guards, who swear no one approached the case during their watch. But one admits to a brief distraction when a visitor fainted nearby yesterday. A staged diversion, Poirot wonders. As the day winds down, Poirot sits on a bench overlooking the Seine, the Eiffel Tower casting a long shadow. He reflects on his findings. Claire's guarded demeanor, Blake's unease, Vogel's curiosity, and the rival inventor's hostility. The Exposition is a labyrinth of motives, and the automaton is the prize at its center. Poirot's instincts tell him the thief is already circling, hidden in plain sight among the fare's thousands. The game is afoot, he murmurs, his mind racing with possibilities, with suspects emerging and clues piling up. The mystery deepens under the glittering lights of Paris. The next chapter will unravel more secrets as Poirot tightens the net. Chapter 3. The Vanishing Act. The evening lights of the Paris Exposition flicker like stars fallen to earth, illuminating the grand pavilions and casting long, dramatic shadows across the Champ de Mars. Hercule Poirot, ever the observer of human nature, finds himself drawn back to the heart of the fair as dusk settles in. The air is alive with the laughter of visitors, the clink of champagne glasses from nearby cafes, and the distant strains of a waltz played by a street orchestra. But for Poirot, this vibrant backdrop only heightens his vigilance. With suspects identified from his earlier inquiries, he knows the thief could strike at any moment, and tonight feels particularly ripe for mischief. The Exposition's nighttime allure, with its gas lamps and electric bulbs showcasing the wonders of modernity, provides perfect cover for those with darker intentions. Poirot starts his evening patrol near Dupont's pavilion, where the automaton hums softly under its glass dome, drawing a steady stream of admirers. He positions himself discreetly behind a column, his sharp eyes scanning the faces in the crowd. There's Claire Lefebvre, bustling about with her clipboard, ensuring everything runs smoothly. She pauses occasionally to chat with visitors, her smile professional but her posture tense. Poirot wonders if her loyalty to Dupont is as steadfast as it seems. After all, assistants often know more secrets than their employers realize. A practical tip for any budding investigator: never overlook those closest to the victim. Familiarity can breed opportunity as much as contempt. As the clock strikes 8, Poirot notices Reginald Blake entering the pavilion, his tweed jacket now paired with a silk cravat, perhaps for an evening event. Blake approaches the automaton, adjusting a gear with a small tool before stepping back to admire his work. Poirot approaches casually, feigning interest in the device. "Ah, Monsieur Blake, your expertise with clockwork is most impressive. Tell me, how did you come to collaborate with Dupont? Blake startles slightly, then recovers with a chuckle. Oh, through mutual acquaintances in London. Dupont needed someone who understands the intricacies of mechanical prediction. But Poirot detects a hesitation, a slight tremor in Blake's hand, as he pockets the tool. Could this Englishman be sabotaging the very machine he's meant to protect? Poirot makes a mental note to delve into Blake's background. Perhaps a telegram to his contacts in Scotland Yard could reveal any financial troubles or rival affiliations. Moving on, Poirot weaves through the throngs toward the international section, where pavilions from around the world compete for attention. He spots Hans Vogel, the Dutch journalist, interviewing a group of German engineers near their exhibit of advanced optics. Vogel's notebook is out, his pen flying across the page, but Poirot sees him glance repeatedly toward Dupont's area. Approaching under the guise of a curious bystander, Poirot engages Vogel in conversation. Monsieur Vogel, your articles on the fair must be fascinating. Have you written about Dupont's automaton yet? Vogel smiles broadly, but his eyes narrow. Not yet, but it's on my list. A true marvel, isn't it? Though I've heard rumors of similar inventions, elsewhere perhaps, not as original as claimed. The implication hangs in the air. Plagiarism, or worse, industrial espionage. Poirot probes. Further, learning that Vogel has connections in Amsterdam's tech circles, where jealousy over French innovations runs high. Another layer to the puzzle. Vogel could be scouting for a buyer, or even acting as a middleman for a theft. The night deepens, and Poirot decides to check on the rivals he overheard earlier. He finds Monsieur Leclerc at a wine tasting in the French pavilion, his burly frame dominating the room as he boasts about his own steam-powered loom. Dupont's toy is child's play compared to real machinery. Leclerc declares to a small audience, his face flushed from the wine. Poirot sidles up, introducing himself as a Belgian admirer of innovation. But surely, monsieur, competition breeds excellence. What do you think of the automaton's predictive abilities? Leclerc snorts. Predictive bar, it's all smoke and mirrors. If it vanishes, the fair would be better off. The threat is veiled. But Poirot senses real animosity. Leclerc's business has suffered from Dupont's rising fame, and desperation can turn honest men to crime. Practical advice: in investigations, follow the money. Grudges often stem from lost fortunes. Nearby, Madame Dubois holds court in the women's innovation corner, her elegant gown shimmering under the lights as she demonstrates a new sewing machine. She's poised and articulate, drawing applause from onlookers. Poirot waits for a lull before approaching. Madame, your invention is a testament to feminine ingenuity. How do you view the mal-dominated exhibits like Dubois's eyes flash with something akin to disdain? Dupont is clever, but overrated. His automaton relies on old principles, dressed up as new. If it were mine, I'd guard it better. Her words carry a hint of warning, and Poirot wonders if she's capable of orchestrating a heist. Women, he knows, are often underestimated in such matters, their intellects as sharp as any man's. Suddenly, a commotion erupts from Dupont's pavilion. A shout, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Poirot rushes over, pushing through the gathering crowd. He arrives to find chaos. The glass case smashed, the automaton gone, and Dupont, pale as a ghost, clutching his chest. It's vanished. Mon Dieu, Poirot, it's gone. The guards are flustered, claiming a blackout and the lights distracted them for Mere moments. Claire is there, wringing her hands, while Blake hovers nearby, his face a mask of shock. Vogel appears, moments later, notebook in hand, as if drawn by the drama. Leclerc and Dubois linger at the edges, their expressions unreadable. Poirot takes charge immediately, his voice calm amid the panic. Messieurs, Madame, no one leaves. The police will be called, but first, the little grey cells must work. He examines the scene, shards of glass scattered inward, suggesting an inside job. A faint footprint in the dust, too small for a man's. Boot perhaps, a woman's shoe. No forced entry on the locks, meaning the thief had a key or picked it swiftly. Practical tip: crime scenes speak volumes. Look for what's missing as much as what's present. The automaton's pedestal shows no signs of struggle, implying a quick, professional grab. Questioning begins on the spot. Claire claims she was fetching papers when the lights dimmed. Blake says he stepped out for a smoke. Vogel insists he was across the way. The guards admit to a vendor offering free samples as a diversion. Dupont reveals the key was in his pocket all along and touched. Poirot's mind races. This was planned, with accomplices perhaps. He notices a scrap of fabric caught on the broken glass tweed, like Blake's jacket, and a smudged ink mark on the floor, reminiscent of Vogel's notebook, that as the police arrive. Led by Inspector Giraud, rival of Poirot's, with his modern methods, Poirot steps aside, but not before securing permission to continue his probe. Giraud scoffs at Poirot's old-fashioned intuition, preferring fingerprints and forensics, but Poirot knows psychology trumps gadgets. The exposition buzzes with gossip now, the theft becoming the talk of the fair, heightening tensions among exhibitors. Retiring to his hotel later, Poirot sips herbal tea, piecing together the clues. The vanishing act was bold, executed under noses, pointing to someone familiar with the pavilion's routines. Suspects abound, motives swirl: jealousy, greed, espionage. But one thing is clear: the automaton holds secrets beyond weather prediction, and recovering it will require unraveling a web of deceit. The theft has shaken the exposition, but Poirot is undeterred, his investigation gaining momentum. In the coming days, alliances will be tested and alibis cracked as the mystery unfolds. Further beneath the Eiffel Tower's watchful gaze. Chapter 4: The Trail of Clouster. Morning after the daring theft at the Paris Exposition, the Champ de Mars hums with a nervous energy. News of the stolen automaton has spread like wildfire, whispered in every cafe and shouted by newsboys hawking. Papers with headlines like Exposition, Heist, Shocks, Paris. Hercule Poirot, however, remains unruffled, his mind a calm oasis amid the storm. Sipping a Café Noir at a small bistro overlooking the Seine, he gazes at the Eiffel Tower, its iron lattice a reminder of order amidst chaos. Today, he plans to follow the trail of clues left at the crime scene, knowing that even the cleverest thief leaves destiny, threads in the tapestry of crime that his little grey cells can unravel. Poirot begins by returning to Dupont Pavilion, now cordoned off by the French police under Inspector Giraud's command. Giraud, with his waxed moustache rivaling Poirot's own, is barking orders, his men dusting for fingerprints and photographing the broken glass case. Poirot, unimpressed by such modern fuss, requests a moment to inspect the scene alone. Giraud grudgingly agrees, muttering about Belgian amateurs. Poirot kneels by the shattered case, his gloved fingers tracing the edges of the glass. The inward break confirms his suspicion. The thief was already inside the pavilion, likely someone with access. The faint footprint he noticed last night, a delicate size, possibly a woman's, has been trampled by police boots, but he sketches its shape in his notebook. Nearby, the tweed scrap and ink smudge remain untouched by Giraud's team. Poirot pockets the fabric discreetly, noting its coarse weave, and collects the ink smudge on a handkerchief for later analysis. Leaving the pavilion, Poirot seeks out Claire Lefebvre, who's overseeing cleanup efforts. Her face is pale, her eyes red-rimmed, as if she hasn't slept. "Mademoiselle, a word," Poirot says gently, guiding her to a quiet bench. He questions her about the night of the theft, focusing on the distraction, the vendor offering free samples. Claire recalls a young man with a tray of pastries, his face partially obscured by a cap. "He was charming, insisted the guards try his eclairs," she says. Poirot presses, "Did you see him leave?" Claire shakes her head, admitting she was distracted by a visitor's question. A classic diversion, Poirot thinks. Practical tip for detectives: distractions are the thief's best friend. Look for who benefits from chaos. He asks Claire about her duties, learning she handles Dupont's correspondence, including the threatening notes. "Show me these letters," he says. Claire hesitates, then promises to retrieve them from Dupont's office later. Next, Poirot tracks down Reginald Blake at the British Pavilion, where he's tinkering with a model steam engine. The Englishman's hands tremble slightly as he adjusts a valve, and Poirot wastes no time. "Monsieur Blake, this fabric," he says, holding up the tweed scrap. "It resembles your jacket. Were you near the case when it broke?" Blake's face flushes. "Preposterous. I was outside, smoking, as I told you." But Poirot notices a tear on Blake's sleeve, the threads matching perfectly. "Perhaps you brushed against something sharp," Poirot suggests, his tone mild but probing. Blake mumbles about a clumsy moment near a toolbox, but his eyes dart away. Poirot doesn't press further yet. Instead, he inquires about Blake's role. "You calibrate the automaton, oui. Did you notice anything unusual in its mechanism?" Blake claims all was normal, but his nervous laugh betrays him. Poirot suspects Blake knows more about the automaton's secrets, perhaps its hidden navigation code. Moving on, Poirot seeks Hans Vogel, the Dutch journalist, at a press tent where typewriters clatter like machine guns. Vogel is drafting an article, his notebook filled with sketches of the automaton. Poirot examines the ink smudge on his handkerchief, comparing it to Vogel's pen. "Monsieur Vogel, you were quick to arrive at the theft. Tell me, what drew you?" Vogel grins, unfazed. "A journalist's nose for news, Herr Poirot. I heard the commotion," but Poirot notices Vogel's ink matches the smudger rare. "Blue-black hue, your pen, it is unique," Poirot asks. Vogel shrugs, claiming it's common in Amsterdam. Poirot files this away, suspecting Vogel's presence at the scene was no coincidence. Could he be working for a foreign buyer, using his press pass as cover? Poirot then visits the rival exhibitors, starting with Monsieur Leclerc. At the French pavilion, Leclerc is demonstrating his loom to a group of investors, his voice loud with false confidence. Poirot interrupts politely, asking about his whereabouts during the theft. Leclerc claims he was at the wine tasting, a claim corroborated by several witnesses. But Poirot notes Leclerc's boots caked with dust, like that near the automaton's pedestal. "You enjoy late walks, monsieur?" Poirot asks. Leclerc bristles, insisting he was nowhere near Dupont's pavilion. Poirot smiles, knowing alibis can crumble under scrutiny. Madame Dubois, meanwhile, is at her sewing machine exhibit. Her composure, unshaken by the theft. Poirot compliments her work, then casually mentions the footprint. A woman's shoe, perhaps. Madame, a smile tightens. Many women visit the fair. Monsieur Poirot, you suspect me because I'm Dupont's rival. Poirot deflects with charm, but notes her quick defense. Her elegance hides a steel will, and her knowledge of mechanics could make her a formidable thief. By afternoon, Claire delivers the threatening notes to Poirot at his hotel. The 3 letters, written in block capitals, warn the automaton is not yours, surrender it or pay, and time runs out. The paper is cheap, the ink blue-black, like Vogel's. Poirot studies the handwriting, noting a slight tremor, suggesting haste or fear. Practical tip, handwriting reveals. Characters' steady hands write confidently, nervous ones falter. He plans to compare it to samples from his suspects. As evening falls, Poirot takes a cab to a small chemist's shop, where he has the ink smudge analyzed. The chemist confirms it's a Dutch brand, rare in Paris, strengthening the case against Vogel. Back at the Grand Hotel, Poirot dines on coq au vin, his mind weaving connections. The tweed points to Blake, the ink to Vogel, the footprint to a woman, perhaps Claire or Dubois. Leclerc's dust-covered boots suggest he was near the scene, despite his alibi. The threatening notes hint at a deeper motive, possibly tied to the automaton's secret code. The clues are mounting, but the picture remains incomplete. Poirot knows the thief is cunning, possibly working with others, and the Exposition's chaos is their ally. With each step, he's closing in. But the next move requires confronting his suspects head-on. The trail grows warmer, and Poirot prepares to turn up the heat in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. Chapter 5. The interrogation game. The Paris Exposition sparkles under the midday sun, its pavilions gleaming like jewels against the backdrop of the Eiffel Tower. Hercule Poirot, however, is far from dazzled. Armed with a growing list of clues, tweed scrap, the blue-black ink, the delicate footprint, and the threatening notes, he's ready to shift from observation to action. Today, he'll confront his suspects directly, turning the screws of psychology to coax out truths or betrayals. The Grand Hotel's private parlor, reserved for his interrogations, becomes his stage. Its velvet curtains and polished oak table, a fitting backdrop for the drama about to unfold. For Poirot, a good interrogation is like a dance, each step calculated, each gesture revealing. The thief who stole Dupont's automaton is close, and Poirot's little grey cells are poised to expose them. Poirot begins with Claire Lefebvre, inviting her to the parlor under the pretense of discussing pavilion security. She arrives promptly, her auburn hair neatly pinned, but her fingers fidget with a lace handkerchief. "Mademoiselle, you are indispensable to Monsieur Dupont," Poirot begins, his tone warm to put her at ease. "But tell me, did you notice anyone unusual near the automaton before the theft?" Claire repeats her story about the pastry vendor, but Poirot shifts gears. "The footprint, Mademoiselle, small, like a woman's. Your shoes, they are petite, Nan." Claire's eyes widen, and she stammers, "Many women have small feet, Monsieur Poirot." He shows her the threatening notes, watching her reaction. Her hands tremble as she reads, but she insists she's never seen them before, except when delivering them to Dupont. Poirot notes her nervousness, genuine fear or guilt. Practical tip for sleuths: watch for physical tells. A trembling hand can speak louder than words. He lets her go, but not before asking her to provide a handwriting sample later, claiming it's for administrative purposes. Next up is Reginald Blake, the English consultant. Blake slouches into the parlor, his tweed jacket replaced by a fresh one, but Poirot doesn't miss the nervous tick in his jaw. Monsieur Blake, this fabric, Poirot says, producing the tweed scrap. It matches your torn sleeve from yesterday. Care to explain? Blake's face reddens, and he insists. He snagged his jacket on a toolbox days ago, nowhere near the pavilion during the theft. Poirot leans forward, his voice soft but piercing. You understand the automaton's secrets, oui. Its navigation code, perhaps, Blake sputters, denying any knowledge beyond basic mechanics. Poirot presses further, mentioning the ink smudge near the case. You use pens, monsieur, for your diagrams. Blake admits to using blue-black ink, but claims it's standard. Poirot smiles, filing away Blake's defensiveness. Could his technical expertise have aided the thief, or is he the mastermind? Hans Vogel, the Dutch journalist, strides in with a cocky grin, his notebook tucked under his arm. Poirot wastes no time. Monsieur Vogel, your ink is most distinctive, he says, holding up the handkerchief with the smudge. It matches the mark at the crime scene, and your timely arrival at the theft quite. The coincidence, Vogel laughs, unfazed. I'm a journalist, Herr Poirot. I chase stories, and my ink is common in Holland. Poirot shows him the threatening notes, watching closely. Vogel's grin falters for a split second, but he recovers, claiming ignorance. Handwriting, monsieur, would you provide a sample? Poirot asks casually. Vogel agrees, scribbling a few lines with a flourish. Poirot notices the same blue-black ink and a slight tremor in the strokes, mirroring the notes. Practical tip. Confidence can be a mask. The boldest liars often crack under scrutiny. Vogel leaves, but Poirot senses he's hiding a connection to the theft, perhaps a foreign buyer or a personal grudge. Poirot then summons Monsieur Leclerc, the burly French inventor. Leclerc arrives, his face flushed with irritation, clearly, resenting the interruption to his exhibit. Monsieur Leclerc, your boots carried dust from the pavilion floor, Poirot says, his tone mild but firm. Yet you claim you were at the wine tasting. Leclerc slams a fist on the table. I was nowhere near Dupont's toy. Ask anyone. Poirot nods, unruffled, and shifts to motive. Your loom competes with Dupont's fame. A stolen automaton would shift attention. Leclerc's eyes blaze, but he insists he'd never stoop to theft. Poirot notes his temper anger can drive rash actions, and Leclerc's rivalry with Dupont runs deep. Finally, Poirot meets Madame Dubois at her pavilion, preferring to catch her in her element. Surrounded by her sewing machines, she's all charm, offering him tea. Madame, your rivalry with Dupont is well known, Poirot says, sipping delicately. And the footprint, could it be yours? Dubois laughs, lifting her skirt to reveal dainty boots. These, common enough, monsieur. You suspect me for being a woman in a man's world. Poirot counters with the threatening notes, watching her closely. She reads them with cool detachment, claiming no knowledge. Her composure is almost too perfect, Poirot thinks. Could her elegance conceal a calculating mind capable of orchestrating the heist? After the interrogations, Poirot retreats to the parlor to compare handwriting samples. Claire's is neat, but lacks the note's tremor. Blake's is messy, with no clear match. Vogel's sample, however, shows a similar slant and shake, though not conclusive. Leclerc and Dubois, yet to provide samples, remain wild cards. Reflects on motives. Claire's access, Blake's expertise, Vogel's connections, Leclerc's jealousy, Dubois's ambition. The automaton's navigation code, he suspects, is the real prize, coveted by nations or corporations. As night falls, Poirot strolls along the Seine, the Exposition's lights reflecting on the water. A telegram from Scotland Yard arrives, confirming Blake's financial troubles, debts that could tempt betrayal. Another from Amsterdam reveals Vogel's ties to a Dutch shipping magnate, hungry for navigation tech. The net tightens, but Poirot needs more, perhaps a trap to lure the thief. The interrogations have stirred the pot, and Poirot senses the culprit growing nervous. The next move will test his cunning as the mystery deepens under the Parisian stars. Chapter 6. The bait is set. The Paris Exposition hums with its usual fervor, but for Hercule Poirot, the glittering spectacle is merely a backdrop to a high-stakes chess game. The sun climbs high, casting sharp shadows across the Champ de Mars, and Poirot's mind is sharper still. With clues pointing to multiple suspects, Claire's nervousness, Blake's debts, Vogel's shady connections, Leclerc's temper, and Dubois's cool ambition, he knows the thief is feeling the pressure. The stolen automaton remains hidden. Its navigation code, a prize that could shift fortunes or even empires. Today, Poirot decides to set a trap, using the thief's greed or desperation to draw them into the open. A master of psychology, he knows that a well-placed bait can unravel even the most careful criminal's plans. Poirot begins his day at Dupont's pavilion, where the broken glass case has been replaced, but the absence of the automaton leaves the exhibit feeling hollow. Visitors still linger, drawn by the scandal, whispering theories about spies or vengeful rivals. Poirot meets Monsieur Dupont in a private office, the industrialist's face etched with worry. Monsieur Poirot, the police are useless. Talks of fingerprints, but my automaton is gone. Poirot soothes him, his voice steady. Patience, mon ami. We shall recover it, but we must be clever. He proposes a bold plan. Spread word that Dupont has a second automaton, a prototype hidden in a secure vault at the Grand Hotel. The rumor will claim this prototype contains the same navigation code, but with a flaw that makes it easier to steal. The thief will come for it, Poirot says, his eyes gleaming, and we shall be waiting. Dupont agrees, though nervously, and Poirot sets the plan in motion. He instructs Claire to leak the rumor, subtly mentioning the prototype. To pavilion staff, knowing gossip spreads like wildfire at the Exposition. Claire nods, her hands steady now, as if relieved to have a task. Poirot watches her closely, wondering if her eagerness hides guilt. Practical tip for investigators: a trap reveals as much about the innocent as the guilty. Watch how each player reacts to the bait. Next, Poirot visits the press tent, dropping a hint to a group of journalists, including Hans Vogel, about Dupont's secret backup. Vogel's pen pauses mid-scribe, his eyes narrowing with interest. A second automaton. Fascinating. He murmurs, scribbling furiously. Poirot smiles inwardly. Vogel has taken the bait to ensure the rumor reaches all suspects. Poirot attends a midday lecture at the British Pavilion, where Reginald Blake is presenting on clockwork innovations. During the Q&A, Poirot casually asks, Monsieur Blake, is it true Dupont keeps a prototype of his automaton elsewhere, perhaps less secure? The room buzzes, and Blake's face pales. I wouldn't know, he stammers, but his fingers fumble with his notes. Poirot notes the reaction: fear or surprise. Later, at the French Pavilion, Poirot mentions the prototype to Monsieur Leclerc, over a glass of cognac. Leclerc laughs bitterly. Another of Dupont's tricks. He'll regret. Flaunting his toys. The venom in his voice is unmistakable, and Poirot marks him as a prime candidate to act on the rumor. Madame Dubois hears the news at a women's innovation tea, where Poirot, posing as a curious guest, brings up the prototype. Dubois raises an eyebrow, her smile sharp. Dupont is careless if he leaves such a thing unguarded. Thieves are bolder than he thinks. Her words are neutral, but her tone suggests calculation. Poirot thanks her. His mind racing. Her composure is a fortress. But even fortresses have cracks. By evening, the rumor has taken hold, rippling through the Exposition like a stone in a pond. Poirot arranges the trap at the Grand Hotel, securing a small vault room with Dupont's help. Inside, they place a convincing decoy, a brass contraption mimicking the automaton, crafted by a local artisan overnight. Poirot ensures the vault's lock is complex, but not impossible, tempting a skilled thief. He stations himself in an adjacent room, hidden behind a tapestry with a peephole, while two trusted hotel guards wait nearby, disguised as porters. The stage is set, the curtain raised. As night falls, the Exposition glows with electric lights, and Poirot waits in the shadows, his pocket watch ticking softly. Hours pass, the hotel quiet except for the occasional creak of floorboards. Then, at midnight, he hears a faint click at the vault door. His heart quickens, but he remains, still, peering through the peephole. A figure in a dark cloak moves swiftly, their face obscured by a hood. They work the lock with practiced ease, using a slender tool that glints in the dim light. Poirot's eyes narrow, the figure's movements are precise, almost delicate, hinting at familiarity with such tasks. Could it be Claire, with her access, Dubois, with her mechanical savvy, or someone else entirely? The vault door swings open, and the figure reaches for the decoy. Poirot signals the guards, who burst in, lanterns blazing. The figure spins, dropping the tool, and bolts for the window, but the guards tackle them to the floor. The hood falls back, revealing not one of Poirot's main suspects, but Pierre, the pavilion's mechanic, his face pale with panic. "I didn't mean harm," Pierre gasps as the guards bind his hands. Poirot steps forward, his expression unreadable. "Monsieur." "Pierre, you surprise me. Explain yourself." Under questioning, Pierre confesses to attempting the theft, claiming he was hired by an anonymous note promising a hefty sum. The note, slipped under his door, bore the same blue-black ink as the threats. "I needed the money," Pierre admits, head bowed. "My family, debts." Poirot examines the tool, a locksmith's pick, suggesting Pierre's skills extend beyond repairs. But Pierre swears he didn't steal the original automaton, only acted on this new opportunity. Poirot believes him. The mechanic's fear is genuine, and his lack of finesse suggests he's a pawn, not the mastermind. Poirot releases Pierre to the police, but keeps the note, its handwriting matching the earlier threats. The trap has caught a minnow, but the shark remains at large. Pierre's confession points to a larger scheme, someone with resources, pulling strings from the shadows. Vogel's Dutch connections, Blake's debts, or perhaps Dubois orchestrating from behind her elegant facade. As dawn breaks, Poirot stands on the hotel balcony, the Eiffel Tower looming in the distance. The trap has narrowed the field, but the automaton's whereabouts remain a mystery. The game grows more dangerous, and Poirot must move quickly before the thief strikes again. The net is closing. but the true culprit remains elusive, hidden in the exposition's dazzling chaos. Chapter 7. The Hidden Code. The Paris Exposition pulses with its usual vibrancy, the air thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and the clamor of excited crowds. But for Hercule Poirot, the morning after his clever trap feels like the calm before a storm. The capture of Pierre, the pavilion mechanic, has confirmed his suspicions. The theft of Dupont's automaton is no solo act but part of a larger conspiracy, with the mysterious navigation code at its heart. Pierre's confession about an anonymous note suggests a mastermind is pulling strings, and Poirot's little grey cells are buzzing with the need to uncover the code's significance. Today, he dives deeper into the automaton's secrets, chasing the motive that drives this audacious crime under the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. Poirot begins at the Grand Hotel, where he meets Monsieur Dupont in a private dining room, away from the Exposition's prying eyes. Over a breakfast of fresh croissants and strong coffee, Dupont reveals more about the automaton's hidden feature. It's not just a weather predictor, he confides, his voice low. Embedded in its gears is a coda mathematical sequence for calculating precise maritime routes, accurate to a fraction of a degree. Navies, shipping companies, they'd pay a fortune for it. Poirot's eyes gleam. This explains the high stakes. A code like that could shift global trade or military power, making the automaton a target for spies, corporations, or even governments. Practical tip for detectives. The motive often lies in what's most valuable. Follow the treasure, and you'll find the thief, determined to understand the code's mechanics. Poirot requests a visit to Dupont's workshop, a small rented space, near the Exposition grounds where the automaton was built. The workshop is a cluttered haven of gears, springs, and blueprints, with tools scattered across wooden benches. Dupont shows Poirot the original designs, pointing out a series of intricate engravings on the automaton's core cylinder, tiny numbers and symbols that form the navigation algorithm. Only I and Blake knew of this, Dupont says, glancing nervously at the door. Poirot examines the blueprints, noting their complexity. Could Blake, with his clockwork expertise, have betrayed Dupont for profit? Or did someone else, perhaps Vogel, with his Dutch shipping ties, learn of the code's existence? Leaving the workshop, Poirot heads to the Exposition's telegraph office to follow up on his inquiries. A reply from Scotland Yard confirms Reginald Blake's debts, £10,000 owed to London creditors, a sum that could tempt even an honest man. The Amsterdam contact reports that Hans Vogel's shipping magnate, a man named Van der Meer, has been linked to industrial espionage, though nothing proven. Poirot's suspicions deepen. Vogel's ink matched the threatening notes, and his presence at the theft was too convenient. But what of Claire or Madame Dubois? Their roles remain murky, and Poirot resolves to test their reactions. He finds Claire Lefebvre at the pavilion, organizing a display to distract visitors from the theft scandal. Mademoiselle, a question, Poirot says, drawing her aside. Did you ever see Monsieur Blake or anyone else study the automaton's designs closely? Claire hesitates, then admits Blake spent hours alone with the blueprints, claiming it was for calibration. Her voice wavers, and Poirot senses she's holding back. And you, mademoiselle, did you know of the navigation code? Claire's eyes widen, and she shakes her head too quickly. No, monsieur, I only managed schedules. Poirot nods, but her denial feels rehearsed. Practical tip: silence can be as telling as speech watch for what's not said. Next, Poirot seeks out Madame Dubois at her sewing machine exhibit, where she's demonstrating a new stitching technique to a crowd of admirers. He waits until she's alone, then broaches the subject. "Madame, the automaton's value lies not in its gears, but in a hidden code. Were you aware?" Dubois's smile doesn't falter, but her fingers pause on her teacup. "A code? How intriguing. But I deal in textiles, not secrets." Her composure is flawless. Yet Poirot detects a flicker of curiosity. Perhaps she knows more than she admits, or perhaps she's fishing for information. Her mechanical knowledge could decipher such a code, making her a formidable player. Poirot then tracks down Hans Vogel at a cafe near the Seine, where the journalist is sipping absinthe and scribbling notes. "Monsieur Vogel, your interest in the automatons, is journalistic or commercial?" Poirot asks, his tone light but pointed. Vogel laughs, but his eyes dart to his notebook. "Purely professional, Herr Poirot. Though I hear it's more than a weather toy navigation, perhaps." The question is too direct, and Poirot counters with another. "Your employer, Vandermeer, does. He seeks such technology." Vogel's grin fades, and he changes the subject. Poirot notes the evasion. Vogel's ties to Dutch shipping make him a prime suspect for passing the code to a buyer. Finally, Poirot confronts Reginald Blake at the British Pavilion, where he's repairing a steam gauge. "Monsieur Blake, your debts in London, they must weigh heavily," Poirot says, watching Blake's hands freeze. "Did someone offer to pay them for, say, a certain code?" Blake's face turns ashen. "I'd never betray DuPont. I only calibrated the machine." But his voice cracks, and Poirot presses further. "You knew the code's value, did you? Share it with anyone?" Blake denies it, but his trembling hands suggest otherwise. Poirot leaves him rattled, knowing fear can loosen tongues as evening descends. Poirot returns to the workshop with DuPont to search for overlooked clues. They find a hidden drawer in a workbench, containing a partial blueprint, showing only the code's encryption method, not the full sequence. The paper bears faint traces of blue-black ink, linking it to Vogel or someone using similar ink. Poirot's mind races. Was this a copy made for a buyer, or a decoy left to mislead? The drawer's lock shows scratches, suggesting it was recently opened. Could Pierre, the mechanic, have accessed it before his arrest? Or was it another accomplice? Sitting by the Seine later, Poirot reflects on the day's findings. The code's value explains the theft's audacity, but the thief's identity remains. Elusive, Claire's hesitation, Dubois's calm, Vogel's connections, and Blake's debts all point to possible guilt, yet none fit perfectly. The partial blueprint suggests the thief may not have the full code, giving Poirot time to act. He decides to escalate his strategy, perhaps by staging a confrontation to force the culprit's hand. The code is the key, and Poirot is closer to unlocking its secrets. The Exposition's glamour hides a dangerous game, and the next move will test his cunning to the limit. Chapter 8. The Masquerade Ball. The Paris Exposition transforms into a dazzling dreamscape as night falls. Its pavilions aglow with thousands of electric lights that rival the stars. Tonight, the organizers host a grand masquerade ball at the Palais du Trocadero, a lavish event to celebrate the fair's success and distract from the automaton theft's scandal. Hercule Poirot, however, sees this glittering affair as the perfect stage for his next move. With the navigation code's significance clear and suspects circling like hawks, he suspects the thief or their accomplice will use the ball's chaos to make a move, perhaps to pass the stolen automaton to a buyer, dressed in a sleek black. Domino mask and a tailored evening suit, Poirot prepares to blend into the crowd. His little grey cells alert for any slip that could unmask the culprit. The Palais du Trocadero is a vision of opulence, its grand hall adorned with chandeliers, gilded mirrors, and cascading flowers. Masked guests in elaborate costumes, Venetian harlequins, Egyptian pharaohs, and Renaissance courtiers swirl across the marble floor to a lively orchestra. Poirot sips a glass of champagne, his eyes scanning the room. The anonymity of masks is a thief's paradise, but also a detective's opportunity. Practical tip for sleuths. In a crowd, observe patterns. Those who avoid attention are often the ones to watch. He spots his suspects among the revelers, their disguises only partially concealing their identities. Claire Lefebvre, in a silver gown and a feathered mask, glides through the crowd, her nervous glances betraying her calm facade. Poirot approaches her during a waltz, offering a polite bow. "Mademoiselle, you seem distracted. Is the ball not to your liking?" Claire startles, then laughs too quickly. "It's overwhelming, Monsieur Poirot. So many people." He probes gently, mentioning the rumor of a prototype automaton. "Have you heard whispers of its whereabouts?" Claire's hand tightens on her fan, and she murmurs, "Only gossip, nothing more." Her unease confirms Poirot's suspicion. Knows something, perhaps about the code or the thief's plans. Next, Poirot spots Reginald Blake, his lanky frame unmistakable despite a jester's costume. Blake lingers near a buffet table, his mask pushed up as he nibbles nervously on a pastry. Poirot joins him, casually remarking, "Monsieur Blake, a ball is a fine place to settle debts, Nan. Perhaps with secrets instead of coin." Blake chokes. On his food, his eyes darting. "I've no secrets to sell." He protests, but his voice quavers. Poirot mentions the partial blueprint found in the workshop, watching Blake's reaction. "Someone copied the code, Monsieur Ousa. Was it you?" Blake denies it, but his flushed cheeks suggest guilt or fear. Poirot lets him squirm, knowing pressure will eventually break him. Hans Vogel, dressed as a pirate with a rakish eye patch, is charming a group of journalists near the dance floor. Poirot joins the conversation, complimenting Vogel's flair. "Your articles must thrive on such intrigue, monsieur. Have you uncovered news of the automaton's buyer?" Vogel's grin falters, and he adjusts his patch. "Just rumors, Herr." "Poirot, I hear the Dutch are keen on navigation tech." The comment is too pointed, and Poirot presses further. "Your ink, it matches the threatening notes." "A coincidence." Vogel laughs, claiming it's a common brand, but his hand grips his glass tightly. Poirot notes the tension. Vogel's bravado hides a calculating mind. Monsieur Leclerc, in a bear-like costume that matches his burly build, is arguing loudly with a wine merchant about vintages. Poirot sidles up, offering a toast to competition. Monsieur Leclerc, though some might sabotage to win, we. Leclerc's eyes narrow behind his mask. "If you mean Dupont's toy, I'd rather crush him fairly." His bluster feels forced, and Poirot recalls the dust on Leclerc's boots. "You were near the pavilion that night, perhaps?" Leclerc sputters, claiming he was drunk at the wine tasting. Poirot smiles, letting the question linger. Madame Dubois, radiant in a peacock-feathered gown and mask, commands attention as she dances with a Russian diplomat. Poirot waits for her to pause, then engages her. "Madame, your grace rivals your ingenuity. But tell me, does the automaton's code interest you?" Dubois's laugh is like crystal. Codes are for spies, Monsieur Poirot. I prefer needles and thread. Her deflection is smooth, but Poirot notices her glance toward Claire, as if assessing a rival. Could they be working together, or is Dubois watching her for other reasons? Midway through the ball, a commotion erupts near the grand staircase. A masked figure in a dark cape drops a small brass gear, which clatters to the floor, drawing gasps. Poirot rushes over, recognizing the gear as similar to the automaton's components. The figure vanishes into the crowd before he can pursue, but Poirot retrieves the gear, noting a faint engraving, a tiny anchor, a symbol linked to maritime navigation. Practical tip: objects left behind are rarely accidents. They're either clues or taunts. The anchor strengthens Poirot's theory that the code's buyer is tied to shipping, perhaps Vogel's Dutch magnate or an unknown player. Poirot gathers his suspects for a private meeting in a side room, claiming it's to discuss security. He shows them the gear, watching their reactions. Claire pales, Blake fidgets, Vogel smirks, Leclerc scowls, and Dubois remains impassive. This gear suggests the automaton is close. Poirot says, "Who among you knows where it hides?" Silence follows, but the tension is palpable. He dismisses them, planting a seed of doubt. Let them suspect each other, and the guilty will falter. As the ball winds down, Poirot slips outside to the Trocadero Gardens, where the Seine reflects the moon. He reflects on the night, Claire's fear, Blake's guilt, Vogel's cunning, Leclerc's rage, Dubois's calm. The gear points to a maritime motive, but the dropped item feels staged, perhaps to mislead. Poirot decides to shadow one suspect tomorrow, narrowing his focus. The ball has stirred the pot, and the thief's mask is slipping. The night's intrigue has brought Poirot closer to the truth. But the automaton remains out of reach, its code a prize in a dangerous dance. Chapter 9. The shadows trail. The Paris Exposition awakens under a grey dawn. The Eiffel Tower shrouded in a light mist that mirrors the murky depths of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The masquerade balls, revelations, the dropped gear. The suspect's telling reactions have sharpened his focus. The automaton's navigation code, a prize coveted by maritime powers, remains the key to unraveling the theft, and Poirot suspects the thief is growing reckless under pressure. Today, he decides to shadow Hans Vogel, the Dutch journalist whose blue-black ink and ties to a shipping magnate make him a prime suspect. With the Exposition's final days approaching, time is short, and Poirot's little grey cells are primed to follow the trail wherever it leads. Poirot begins at the press tent, where Vogel is often found typing his stories. Dressed in a plain overcoat to blend into the crowd, Poirot lingers nearby, pretending to read a newspaper. Vogel emerges, his pirate costume from the ball replaced by a sharp suit, his notebook tucked under his arm. He moves with purpose, weaving through the morning crowds toward the Dutch pavilion, a modest structure showcasing maritime innovations. Poirot follows at a discreet distance, his steps silent on the cobblestones. Practical tip for detectives: shadowing requires patience. Stay close enough to observe, far enough to remain unseen. Vogel pauses to chat with a Dutch exhibitor, a wiry man with a sailor's tan, their conversation hushed but animated. Poirot catches the word navigation and sees Vogel pass a small envelope, a payoff or an innocent exchange. Following Vogel to a cafe near the Seine, Poirot takes a table in the corner, his face half hidden by a menu. Vogel meets a second man, older and impeccably dressed, with a heavy Dutch accent, likely Vandermeer. the shipping magnate mentioned in Poirot's telegram. Their discussion is brief, and Poirot strains to hear, catching fragments about delivery and tonight. Vogel hands over another envelope, this one thicker, and Vandermeer nods curtly before leaving. Poirot's instincts flare. Vogel is likely a middleman, passing information or even the automaton itself. But where is it hidden? The Exposition's sprawling grounds offer countless hiding spots in used pavilions, storage rooms, or even the river. Poirot decides to confront Vogel directly. But first, he doubles back to Dupont's pavilion to check for new clues. There, he finds Claire Lefebvre sorting papers, her face drawn with worry. "Mademoiselle, have you seen Monsieur Vogel near the pavilion recently?" Poirot asks. Claire hesitates, then admits Vogel interviewed her yesterday, asking detailed questions about the automaton's design. "He seemed too curious," she says, her voice trembling. Poirot presses, "And the gear from the ball, did you recognize it?" Claire shakes her head, but her eyes flicker toward a locked cabinet. Poirot notes it, suspecting she's hiding something, perhaps loyalty to Dupont, or complicity. Next, Poirot visits the British pavilion to keep tabs on Reginald Blake. He finds Blake tinkering with a steam engine, his hands stained with grease. "Monsieur Blake, you were uneasy at the ball," Poirot says, holding up the brass gear. "This anchor symbol, does it mean anything to you?" Blake's hands shake, and he mumbles, "Just a design, nothing special." But his eyes betray panic. Poirot mentions Vogel's meeting with Vandermeer, watching Blake closely. A Dutch buyer, perhaps, for the code you know so well. Blake denies everything, but his stammering suggests he's cracking under pressure. Poirot leaves, certain Blake is involved. Perhaps coerced by debts to cover all bases, Poirot checks on Monsieur Leclerc and Madame Dubois. At the French pavilion, Leclerc is shouting at a supplier, his temper flaring. Poirot asks about his movements last night, noting Leclerc's discomfort when the gear is mentioned. "I was at the ball, drunk as a lord." Leclerc insists, but his boots still carry dust from the pavilion floor. At her exhibit, Dubois is serene, demonstrating her sewing machine. Poirot shows her the gear, probing a maritime symbol. Madame, does it spark any ideas? Dubois smiles thinly. "Only that the sea is full of secrets, monsieur." Her calm is unnerving, and Poirot wonders if she's playing a deeper game by afternoon. Poirot follows Vogel to a quieter part of the Exposition, near the machinery storage sheds. Vogel slips into one, and Poirot waits, heart pounding, before creeping closer. Peering through a crack, he sees Vogel inspecting a crate, its lid partially open. Inside glints a brass-shaped automaton. Poirot's pulse races, but before he can act, a shadow moves behind him. He spins, catching a glimpse of a cloaked figure, possibly the same from the ball. Before they vanish into the crowd, was it Claire's Dubois or another accomplice? Poirot hesitates to confront Vogel alone, knowing he needs proof to tie him to the theft. Instead, he alerts Inspector Giraud, who arrives with 2 officers to secure the shed. They find the crate, but it's empty. That automaton moved again. Vogel, questioned on the spot, claims he was investigating a tip for a story. "I'm a journalist, not a thief," he protests, but his ink-stained fingers and nervous glance betray him. Giraud arrests him for questioning, but Poirot knows Vogel isn't the mastermind, just a link in the chain. The cloaked figure suggests a larger network, and the empty crate means the automaton is still in play. As dusk settles, Poirot sits by the Seine, the mist clearing to reveal the Eiffel Tower's silhouette. He reviews the day, Vogel's meeting with Vandermeer, the empty crate, the cloaked figure, and the suspect's reactions. The gear's anchor symbol points to a maritime motive, likely tied to the Dutch, but Claire's secrecy, Blake's fear, and Dubois's calm keep them in the frame. Leclerc's temper makes him a wild card. Poirot decides to set one final trap, using the Exposition's closing ceremony to flush out the true culprit. The trail is hot, but the automaton slips through. Poirot's fingers, its code a tantalizing prize in the Exposition's final act. Chapter 10. The Culprit Unmasked. The final day of the Paris Exposition dawns with a brilliant sun, casting a golden hue over the Champ de Mars and the majestic Eiffel Tower, symbolizing the triumph of human ingenuity. But for Hercule Poirot, this day promises the triumph of justice over deception. With the automaton still missing and the navigation code at stake, Poirot orchestrates a grand gathering of suspects at Dupont's pavilion, now restored but empty without its star exhibit. The air is thick with anticipation as Claire Reginald Blake, Hans Vogel, Monsieur Leclerc, and Madame Dubois assemble, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Inspector Giraud stands by, his skepticism evident, but Poirot's calm demeanor commands the room. Mise Amos, the time has come to reveal the truth, Poirot announces, his mustache twitching with satisfaction. The little grey cells have pieced together the puzzle, and the thief shall be unmasked. Poirot begins by recapping the clues, his voice measured and dramatic, drawing everyone into his narrative. He holds up the brass gear from the masquerade ball, its anchor symbol glinting in the light. This gear, dropped deliberately, points to a maritime motive, navigation code embedded in the automaton, a treasure for shipping empires. He turns to Hans Vogel, the Dutch journalist, whose face pales slightly. Monsieur Vogel, your ties to Vandermeer, the Dutch magnate, are no secret. Your blue-black ink matches the threatening notes, and your presence at every twist of this case is too coincidental. You scouted the automaton, using your press pass as cover. Vogel protests, his voice rising, lies. I'm merely reporting the story. But Poirot continues, undeterred. You hired Pierre as a pawn, and your meeting with Vandermeer sealed the deal to sell the code. Shifting his gaze to Reginald Blake, Poirot's eyes narrow. But you, Monsieur Blake, provided the inside knowledge. Your debts in London made you vulnerable, and Vogel exploited that. You copied the partial blueprint, sabotaging the automatons subtly to make the theft easier. The tweed scrap from your jacket at the crime scene and your trembling hands during interrogations, they betray you. Blake slumps in his chair, his face crumbling. It was supposed to be harmless. Vogel promised to pay my debts if I shared the designs. I didn't know he'd steal it. The room gasps, and Jerome moves closer, ready to act. Poirot isn't finished. He addresses Claire Lefebvre, who fidgets with her handkerchief. Mademoiselle, your nervousness stemmed from suspicion. You saw Blake lingering too long with the blueprints, but loyalty to Dupont kept you silent. A mistake, but not criminal. Claire nods tearfully, relief washing over her. Next, Poirot turns to Monsieur Leclerc. Your rivalry and temper made you a suspect, monsieur, but your bluster is just that noise without action. The dust on your boots was from your own exhibit, not the theft. Leclerc grunts, crossing his arms, but a hint of respect flickers. In his eyes, finally, Poirot faces Madame Dubois, her elegant posture unbroken. Madame, your composure is admirable, But your ambition led you to eavesdrop on Dupont's secrets. You planted the footprint diversion, hoping to frame a woman, perhaps even Claire, to deflect suspicion. But your true role was as unwitting informant. You shared gossip that aided his plan, though not knowingly part of the heist. Dubois's smile fades, her eyes flashing with defiance. I seek only progress, Monsieur Poirot. If my words helped, it was unintentional. Poirot nods. Indeed, madame, but beware, ambition can blind one to allies' true natures. With the pieces laid bare, Poirot reveals the automaton's location. Following Vogel to the storage shed confirmed my theory. Though the crate was empty when Giraud arrived, I anticipated the move. Last night, I shadowed Vogel to a hidden compartment beneath the Dutch pavilion, where the automaton was stashed, awaiting transport to Vandermeer. At Poirot's signal, Giraud's officers enter, carrying the recovered automaton, its gears. Worry softly. The crowd outside cheers as Dupont embraces his invention, tears of joy in his eyes. Vogel and Blake are handcuffed, their scheme unraveled. Vogel snarls, "You meddlesome Belgian," but Poirot merely smiles. The little grey cells, monsieur, they always prevail. As the exposition winds down, Poirot strolls along the Seine with Dupont, the Eiffel Tower looming proudly. Mon ami, your automaton is safe, and the code remains yours. Share it wisely, for innovation should unite, not divide. Dupont nods gratefully, promising to enhance security for future exhibits. The fair's closing ceremony bursts with fireworks, illuminating the night sky. A fitting end to a mystery solved amid the wonders of 1889. Practical tip for aspiring detectives. The truth lies in the details. Observe, connect, and never underestimate the power of psychology. With the case closed, Poirot boards his train home, his mind already wandering to the next puzzle. And there you have it, folks, the thrilling conclusion to Poirot and the mystery of the Paris Exposition. If you enjoyed this tale of intrigue and deduction, hit that like button, subscribe for more storytelling adventures, and comment below, who did you suspect was the thief? Let's discuss.